Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel and thanks for joining our second episode in our dark crime series. Today we've got a really good one for you. This is about Brian, his middle name's Coney, is that right?
Yeah.
Coney Adams.
Mm-hmm.
And that had a bunch of stuff go down here in, I don't want to give too much away yet, but went down here in Phoenix, Arizona. So you want to divulge anything yet, Joe?
So on October 9th, 2001, at 9:29 p.m., Brian Adams' girlfriend came to check on him after not hearing from him for a few days. He was located inside the living room. Brian had been fatally shot. So
Wow.
we're going to get into this. We're going to find out there's just so much happening around Brian Adams in his life. We're going to hear from his brother and just different characters that could have played a part in his homicide, but could have not. They're just, again, you know, there's that old saying, tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are, right? So you surround yourself with people, and whether they're shady or not, and you never know what kind of outcome might come from that, right? So
That's right. All right. Well, let's get this going.
let's do it.
All right, everybody. Thanks again for joining us for our second episode of Dark Crimes. And this one's entitled A Beautiful Heart, Tragic Death of Brian Adams. So I know a little bit about what's going on here, Joe, but you want to kind of kick into this and we'll...
So Brian Adams, he grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. At the time of his death, he was 44 years old. He was discovered again, like we said earlier, on October 9th. Yeah, by his girlfriend.
October 9th, 2021.
Correct.
2001, sorry.
2001. He joined the Navy shortly after the Vietnam era, and he was kicked out due to hanging with the wrong crowd. Right. This is according to his brother Brett. So early on, you could already see kind of like, okay, he kind of liked hanging out with the wrong group of people. Right. I mean, clearly to the point where he got kicked out of the Navy for hanging around with these shady characters. He had started his own business. After leaving the Navy, he started an industrial steam cleaning business, right? And so he held several accounts with local restaurants and industry places, right? So he'd go in there, clean those vents, they get full of grease and whatnot, and he would go in there and power wash them. So he had his own business. Because he did spend a few years of his life struggling with methamphetamine addiction, Brett, his brother, who is 6 years younger than him, he took on that older brotherly role in the 90s and early 2000s because he did have that problem. And of course, with that problem comes, of course, we'll go back to a little bit to his Navy days, the kind of people you surround yourself with, right?
Right.
Very shady, very, very, you start working those Phoenix streets, looking for methamphetamine, you're going to find shady characters, right? And that's anywhere, not just Phoenix. I mean, clearly this happened in Phoenix, but that's anywhere that you deal with any kind of drug, right?
And then, of course, with the drugs, he got popped more than once, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's correct. Brian did face a few drug arrests, and he bonded a lot with the homeless population. And not only because he was out doing methamphetamine, right? But he did frequent downtown Phoenix parks a lot. And knowing Phoenix, you've seen how shady those parks are, right?
Yeah.
So, but there was another side of Brian. Although Brian had a methamphetamine addiction, he did hand out clothing and food boxes to a lot of these homeless people that lived in Phoenix. So that's why he kind of had that bond with the homeless population, because he not only had this problem that he had to deal with himself, he was out there helping the community where he lived, where he worked, where he grew up in.
Right. And he was a chef in the Navy.
Correct. Yeah. So that's where he used a lot of his skills, was to create, like, he used to love making these cookies, these type of cookies that he had, and he would love to bake.
We all love some cookies, right?
So. We all love the cookies, but
I'm staying away from them right now. But
yeah, you are. Good job. But anyway, he did that. He had these cookies that he make. I think it was like a cookie brownie mix or something like that. And so he would make those and hand them out. But his brother Brett always talked about how he had a beautiful heart, right? And he always prioritized other people over himself. So can you imagine that you're dealing with this methamphetamine issue, this addiction that you have that clearly has gotten him into trouble, has probably put him around the wrong type of people, but he still finds a way to help others in need, knowing that he damn well needs that help himself.
Yeah.
So he had a course because of that, and because of the addiction, he hung out or had this problem of hanging out with the wrong crowd. Right? He did it in the Navy, and now he's doing it in his life outside of that. So it's kind of crazy, and being that you and I know a little bit about those type of scenes, not because we've ever participated in narcotics, but we how we grew up, families in our lives, law enforcement in our lives,
Yeah.
all kinds of things. We kind of see, and friends from our past that, how that road leads to or where it
Right.
leads
Got
to.
into, I
Right.
mean, I've had, a couple family members. One was heavy into drugs, the other one into alcohol. Actually, alcohol almost always plays a
Mm-hmm.
part in that. And, just about everybody knows a family or close friend or a close friend or family member that has somebody else that, has some kind of substance abuse stuff. So yeah, it compounds. You don't know the whole story, but he was in the military, so who knows what if he had any kind of after effects from that coming back. So
And most people that are in the military and have PTSD or go through some kind of trauma, even if they don't see an active war, but are
mhm.
dealing with things out there, they
Right,
don't share that a lot, right? So they have to deal with it on their
right,
own way and any way. And so we already know that Brian had some kind of pull to the wrong crowd, right? Whether that was his personality, whether he was just an outgoing guy and he liked to help people, but he also liked to, and we've seen those people, right? I think you and I have seen people that they go to the most at risk people, and those are the ones that you try to make your friends because you want to help them, you want to get out of there. And in doing so, sometimes you fall into the wrong crowd, right? Or something happens.
yeah,
So almost a year before his murder, though, Brett, his brother, had cautioned Brian about the risks involved with that type of behavior, right? Saying that he may die as a
absolutely,
result from his substance abuse, right? Or with the people he's with or that he hangs out with.
right.
And that's important. That's important. That's going to be key because there's going to be a lot of people in and out of his life.
Yeah.
As
Well,
you
you
got,
think about it, Brett's spidey senses were going off, right? Like we
right?
would. I mean, I had a friend of mine years ago that was, pretty far into alcoholism. I mean, really bad, and I didn't realize it until
Okay, bro. I drink once in a while. I don't even know why you have to bring this up like this, but anyway.
I am trying to keep this anonymous, okay? No, I remember he called me
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, "Hey, can you come over?" And he sounded a little toasty, and it was in the morning, man. It was like, I don't know, 9 or 10 in the morning. And he's like, "Hey, stop by the store. I'll pay you back. Pick up an 18 pack of beer." And that was during my whole dry season. I
Yeah.
wasn't drinking or anything. I'm like, "All right." And I bring it over to him, and there's literally one of those big, huge trash cans full of beer cans that are empty. And it's like not even 11 o'clock yet. And I get there and he breaks that thing open, cracks open the first beer. And I was like, dude, you have a problem, man. So yeah, you can see people going down. And he ended up becoming homeless for a little while and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff. So obviously, at Brian's brother,
Yeah.
he could sniff it, man. He knew it was coming down the road, that he's gonna get into trouble at one point, whether it was the addiction portion or the people that were probably egging on his addiction.
Well, think about it.
So
He's Brett's the younger brother of Brian, so he knows his
absolutely.
brother. He sees how he is and things like that.
Yeah.
Now he's taking this addiction. Now he's using methamphetamine. He's hanging around with the wrong crowd. He's starting to notice things about his brother that
Yeah.
worry him. And like you said, his spidey senses are going off, and he's like,
Right.
"Hey, bro, if the drugs you're doing don't kill you, the people you're hanging out with will." And let's
Yeah.
be honest, those dealers and other users, they're shady characters, right? And when it comes to money and narcotics, that's a fine line.
Yeah.
You have that's a 50-50 chance, man. And before you know it, think about it. He had his own business. He had that steam cleaning business. But if you're so high or if you're spending time doing drugs, your business is going to suffer, right? And
Yeah.
in doing so, your money, your income is going to drop. How are you going to pay for those drugs, right? How are you going to pay for any of those things? Or did Brian owe money? There's so many factors, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of, and the thing is, man, when you're does themselves in, right? Because I don't know, they lost their job, and all of a sudden they can't pay their mortgage and they can't pay for stuff, and there's no reason to do that kind of thing, but if somebody does that, those are traceable things, right? Because you can say, oh man, he was like really bad in debt and all
Right.
these kind of things. And again, there is no reason. There's a lot of people that are in horrific debt. It's no reason to do anything drastic like that.
Right.
But things like this, because you're talking about purchases that are made with probably cash on the side, trades, people there's no receipts, there's no background on this, and you can't go to downtown. Hey, do you remember Brian? And did you sell him anything? I mean, you're not going to get answers, so there's a lot of that area that's just extremely questionable, and you're
Absolutely.
never going to get a solid answer.
And come on, we're dealing with illegal substances and illegal activity. Right. Is anyone going to talk about that? No, in fear of getting arrested or getting in trouble themselves, right? And so the Phoenix police believe that Brian's murder was a combination of both the drug use and the crowd he kept. Right now, it's been 23 years and they still can't solve this murder. Right. So. And that's kind of crazy, because what's that tell you? Like, people don't talk. People aren't, they don't want to get involved. And by now, 23 years later, who knows? What's going on? People have, and if again, we're talking about narcotics in that world. People are probably dead. People have OD'd.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're gone.
At this point, Brian would be what, 66 years old?
Yeah,
67. I don't. His birthday and all that. Yeah, because we're coming up in 2 months. It'll be
October.
23 years. Yeah, from when this happened. So you're right. Like, the case is becoming extremely cold because any of the people that probably had interactions with him that would have physically sold him stuff, and not necessarily anybody that had anything to do with him being shot or anything like that, but just people that may have seen him for the last time and could have any information. Those people they're either dead, or they've gotten out of that lifestyle, God willing, and moved on, and you wouldn't find them down in that area anyways, because a lot of people that try to get out of that stuff, they try to move,
Oh yeah,
because they don't want to run into the same old crowd, and it gets you right back into it again. I mean, I can't.
Or they're out there on Bethany Road drooling, brain dead. Who knows? I don't. There's so many factors behind that. Narcotics ain't something easy to get out of.
No.
So if they're involved in, especially methamphetamines, and if you're involved in that, the probability of dying are high. Even more so today, when the introduction of fentanyl in a lot of these drugs. Even though this happened 23 years ago, it's hard to, people's think about it. Like you said, let's say they were on drugs that whole time. Now they're off of drugs. They're not going to remember what happened back then. They have very little memory, if any. So, but now let's turn to the day of. This is October 9th, 2001, right? So after he had not spoken, this is Brian, had not spoken to his girlfriend over the weekend, she went to pay him a visit, right, at his home, which is on 15th Avenue and PR Avenue, in that area, in that vicinity. So when she got there, one of the things she noticed is that his truck was in the driveway and it was unlocked, right? So 2001, Phoenix, you don't leave your stuff unlocked.
Yeah,
right?
No, not at all.
Yeah, no. It's just, his front gate was unlocked, right? Another thing, you don't leave unlocked, right? But she did have to use her key to open the front door. So that's kind of odd, right? How's his front door locked?
Yeah.
But he's inside. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. So that's either someone had a key, or did they find another way out? Did they go through a window? What there's just so many unanswered questions, and the police reports aren't that forthcoming. There's not a lot of information.
Right. Well, and that is weird, because if you think about it, so somebody might say, like, so if the gate and the truck weren't a thing, I would say, well, they locked it to make it seem like maybe he was gone or something like that, whether or not the truck was there. But if you're trying to, like, throw off somebody from finding him right away so you can get away, whoever did it, you would have closed the gate, you would have shut the door. But again, we're talking about possible crackheads, right? That are, who knows what they
Exactly.
do. And have you ever locked yourself out of your house?
God, yeah.
Yeah, I have too. And the thing is that uh, I have like this, routine every day when I leave and stuff, that I turn the knob or click or whatever. And you get so accustomed to that,
Correct.
and it's really easy to think somebody started to leave and just locked it and closed the door, even after a horrific thing that they did or what have you. So yeah, it's tough to say what's going through somebody's mind. And again, if it's just some crackhead that he's dealing with. Now, tell us what was found at the scene from the police officers.
So around Brian's body was a wealth of evidence, right? They had crack pipes, shell casings, just a bunch of drug paraphernalia that was just laying around.
Yeah,
So
see, so you think about it, right? So you've got crack pipes, and that was very specific, right? That it was more
correct.
than one, that
Yeah.
there was multiples.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for just even the weed smokers out there, if you go to a friend's house, you don't take like 3 or 4 pipes, right? You
No,
have your own, and that's all you have, and maybe your buddy's got his own, and right.
your
So
favorite one, your
your
favorite
favorite
glass one,
one,
right?
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and the same thing with these guys. They're doing their crack thing. They've got one pipe, so a couple pipes means that he was probably interacting with other people. They were all smoking, however many that was. There's not a specific on the number of pipes, but so that really starts to make you think like, okay, so you're with friends, and imagine, get away from the crack thing for a minute. You're just all drinking. You're all having a couple beers or a couple, or you're just, everybody's smoking a bowl or whatever it is. What happened that it turned to violence, right? What was said? Did he owe money, or maybe somebody owed him money and he was, like, hey man, you need, kind of thing. And they're like, nope, I can't pay this guy. So I'm going to, end it
But
right here.
and that's a
But
great point because keep in mind this guy did have his own business. Did they
right.
go to rob him? Did they go? But
Yeah.
when you're in let's that area of town that where his house was is not the safest of
It's
places,
not the best
right?
area.
It's not the
Yeah.
best area in
I'm not,
Phoenix.
I'm
It's
not
we're not
buying a
look.
house.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
not
not
buying a house
looking.
there.
Yeah, we're not. It's not like you're looking at Old Town Scottsdale, right? This is
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Phoenix,
Right.
right? And to have those things just not locked and think, but then the door's locked, right? And then you go inside and there's all kinds of evidence sitting inside, and some of it's not shared for a good reason, right? Because if they ever do find a suspect and they're able to
Oh yeah.
say, oh, okay, this wasn't released to the public, so clearly this guy was there or not. So the police understood, through conversations with their friends and things like that, they knew that he had a drug use issue. He had dubious relationships and whatnot. So it's just unanswered questions, right? So
Right.
why didn't they steal the truck? Crackheads, they're going to find anything they could sell, they could move, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's a truck for a chop shop or it's a whole truck to sell and move around, they're going to do something with it. But to
Right.
not take the truck, it almost seems like these people were kind of like what Brian was, like a functioning drug addict, right?
Yeah.
And they're probably like, no, we can't take the truck because then they could trace it back to us. So they had a little thought process behind it. At least that's what
Right.
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So we understand in the area where Brian lived, there's a lot of narcotics going on. That whole area, right?
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. You're right off the kind of north or part of the 17 freeway, which is, it's not great up there. I mean, you're halfway between the 10 and the 101, and
not a good area.
no.
So here's the
No,
thing.
it's not.
Here's the thing that's crazy. At the time, there was undercover narcotic officers on a stakeout at Brian's neighbor's house, right? At the time of this incident. But so what in their investigation, when they discovered that, they realized that the narcotics officer said that there was a white Ford Windstar minivan at Brian's house. So now they got something, right? They're starting to work with something, like what's going on. And so witnesses also report a similar vehicle in the neighbor's house where they were watching the narcotics. The narcotics team was watching that house. So it was both at the neighbor's house and at Brian's house. And coincidentally, on the day his body was found, that van was there. So now they're like, oh, okay, this is getting good. Now it looks like we're putting some, the neighbors
Putting
in
some
our,
pieces together, right?
yeah, right. The neighbors is doing drugs. Clearly, Brian had issues with drugs, and this van that was at the neighbor's house at one point is now at Brian's house, and at the day that his body was discovered, which is crazy. Right now, like, okay, this has to be. That's almost easy. That's almost an easy give. Like, okay, now we got our suspect, or at least a person of interest, right?
Person of interest, yeah, definitely, yeah.
So that was kind of crazy. So the van registration, police say, was linked to a man known to Brian for a year now. I think Brian knew him for over a year. It was a friend of his. The van owner was a Hispanic male named Victor Cameron. Cameron.
Camarón.
Cameron. I'm trying to say shrimp, and I don't know why. Cameron.
It's making me hungry.
Yeah. So
Very
Brian, in that circle, keep in mind, now we're talking about the circle of friends that are associated with drug use or just shady stuff, right? But they told friends that Victor had threatened the van owner over a potentially illegal gun deal. So apparently his buddy who owned the minivan had a deal that he was working out with this Hispanic dude named Victor. And it was a gun deal. So I'm sure it's illegal, right? So again, guys that use meth or use drugs are not dealing with legal stuff here, right? They're not buying a gun at your local gun store. So Brian's friend, the guy who owned the minivan, was working a deal with this Victor guy, right? And apparently they had some issues going on. So I don't know if the Victor felt like he was being ripped off or he didn't produce a gun. I don't know what the story was.
He put Brian in the middle of the whole thing, huh?
Brian was the middleman. So I think
yeah.
Brian was a guy that you like, hey, Victor would give him the money and then he gave this buddy kind of like, transactional thing.
Right.
So
go see Brian for the money kind
right.
of thing. Yeah.
So no one's ever associated with one or the other, right?
Right.
So Victor paid Brian money and claimed that the van owner was a dead man. So this is a threat that Hispanic dude told Brian, right? Who was supposed to relay that to his buddy, which is the guy who owned that white Windstar, that Ford Windstar. And so cops found this out. This is information the cops are finding out now, right? That, oh, okay, this guy's clearly a person of interest, because if he's threatening the life of somebody else, what if in those dealings Brian gets upset or something? The guy probably killed him,
Yeah.
So Brian's girlfriend identified Victor, right? And the van owner. And then there was another Hispanic man with tattoos. Here's the thing. And she didn't admit this at first, but the girlfriend finally admitted that all those three people, including herself, those three men were with her when she discovered the body. Isn't that weird? Why are all these people with her? Like, I don't understand. Like, what does, like, there's not a lot of information about her. So that kind of, that's kind of shady right there.
Right.
Like, is she involved? Is she not involved? Why do these men, and why did she keep that from the police?
Right.
The van owner denied involvement. Right. This is Brian's friend. He mentioned, but he did mention that Victor Cameron might be possibly involved. Of course, he didn't tell him about the gun deal. The girlfriend's the one that told the police about the gun deal. So William Shira, he's a detective for the Phoenix Police Cold Case Squad, said they haven't ruled out Brian's girlfriend, but nothing has really painted her as a suspect. But to me, it's kind of questionable. Like,
yeah,
and I get it. And again, they're not sharing a lot of information, but to me, it's questionable. Like, why are these people, like, she's involved somehow. She has to be.
Yeah. Yeah. If she shows up there with those guys, I mean, imagine none of this went down and she shows up with those guys. Well, what does that mean? Right.
Yeah.
So you as Brian are going to be like, why are you hanging out with these guys? Unless that involvement had already been there. And, I would, assuming that if he's in that lifestyle, she's, she probably gets into that lifestyle too. Cause usually birds of a feather, man,
Together.
Yeah. And, especially relationship stuff, usually unless somebody comes into a relationship already messed up like that, one feeds the other, as far as
correct
drugs and or alcohol or whatever, and it gets worse and worse as time goes by. So
Correct.
yeah, that's yeah. I mean, I would investigate the heck out of her, but what are they gonna do? I
So,
mean,
and here's the crazy thing about it is that, you know, you're dealing with a bunch of shady characters in this at this point,
yeah,
right?
every
You
single one of them.
right. You got Victor, right, which is this dude that's already threatened the van owner, right?
Right.
And then you got this other Hispanic dude that's
You're a
all
dead
tatted
man.
up, right? Yeah, exactly. And then the girlfriend, like you can't write a better plot twist,
Mm-hmm.
in a movie. All these people are involved, but who's to say that, again, we're living in this weird world of narcotics, that Brian's girlfriend wasn't involved with Victor or with the guy with the tattoos or the van owner. Like we don't know. What if they were all in cahoots? What
Yeah.
There's so many unanswered questions, and the thing is
Right.
that none of these get answered in any of these police reports or any of these investigations. And because it's a cold case, there's really no active work being done unless something new either surfaces or there's a new witness or something like that. Other than that, it's not getting touched, right?
Right.
And so they know at this point, like if they didn't solve it in 2001 or 2002 or 2003, they're not going to solve it in 2023, right? Because all
No.
these characters are gone. And
Yeah.
none of them were told, hey, don't leave the state. None of them were told nothing like that. So they clearly were free to move around.
Right. And
Um, Go ahead.
whatever so Victor, they questioned him.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously he had a big part in the whole thing because of him actually saying the guy's a dead man, and then dealing with Brian as the middleman for the money and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
Where is he at now?
Well, that's the thing. They don't know his current location. They don't know. There's no indication he's still living in Arizona. For all we know, Victor's in Mexico. He's gone.
Yeah.
Right. But here's the thing, man. You're dealing with illegal gun purchases and narcotics and stuff like that. You're not gonna like do more investigative work. You're not gonna, there's I don't
Right.
know. I don't want to say that Phoenix dropped the ball here, but there have been cases that Phoenix has dropped the ball on.
Yeah. And this sounds like it might be one of them.
And this sounds like it might be one of them because you're looking at, you have 4 suspects here. And
Right.
really you can't go outside that spectrum. I mean, you don't want to close all your possibilities, but at this point you got 4 good suspects, right?
Yeah.
All these people have, and the narcotics team that was watching Brian's neighbor have ID that this van has been at Brian's house, right? Victor's involved in that house. All 4 of them showed up at his house on the day they found the body. I mean, it's just too much coincidental stuff to say, well, we'll keep looking. There's really, I mean, and I get it. If you can't connect the dots, you can't connect the dots, right?
Right.
But we're not talking about some intellectual people. These guys are meth heads, crack heads, and they're able to do this. It's, to me, it's just shady. It's just shady and I feel like Brian's girlfriend is involved somehow.
Yeah.
I just do. This guy had, he had his own business, man. He had money out there, and there was no talk of money. There's no talk about anything missing. It's the focus is, and let's be honest, you're dealing with somebody that he's a drug user, hangs out with the wrong crowd. He's going to get written off as, victim of his own demise, a victim of his environment.
Yeah.
Right. And they're not going to look at that into it too much. Now, if this was and I don't want to say this, it sounds cruel, but if this was a homicide in Scottsdale or Prescott or in Flagstaff, or they'd probably be a little bit more in tune to what's going on.
Right.
But you are living in Phoenix. Phoenix it's a high crime area. There's a lot going on. Your resources are stretched. It is hard. It is hard, especially when it's a narcotics case that's involved. It's even harder because look at your witnesses. They're not credible witnesses. Most of them are probably high at the time that they were gotten talked to. So there's just so much there's only so much you could do under the circumstances. I don't know. It's just crazy to me. It just seems really suspect to me.
Yeah, it is. Thinking about it just like really quickly, you have these 4 people show up the day he passed. So one of 2 things for me, in my opinion on it. these four people like all come together, knocking on his door. Hey, Brian, where you at? What's going on? Oh my gosh, he got shot. Because the girlfriend used her key, right, to get in
Yeah,
because the
yeah,
door was
yeah.
locked.
Correct.
So that if just hearing the story, and if you believe the story, those people are all innocent because they're all together. They're surprised when they walk in, right?
Correct.
In that part of if the story floated that way. The other side of that is somebody had the rationale and said, listen, one of us oops and he died in the crossfire, whatever the case is.
Right.
We need to leave and we need to come back and pretend that, oh my gosh, and the police are gonna, probably put us as suspects, but be like, well, why would they have all went back there and kind of, blown it off a little bit that it's not as
Yeah.
serious of a deal? Because a couple weeks ago when we did our other one, where the guy burns down his house and then
Oh, yeah. No.
leaves, and we're still looking for him. Well, that's when you start thinking about it. So the problem I have now is that you have Victor that's nowhere to be found.
Correct.
So I'm pretty sure he had something to do with it. The girlfriend probably knew about it, and this other guy probably knew about it. However, they may not have, committed the deal. I think Victor wanted to get the heck out of Dodge, and he probably was using some kind of alias of some kind.
He could be, but here's the thing. Let me tell you something. So, because years have passed, people now, investigators now use, of course, DNA. And so a lot of the samples they collected back then, they processed through DNA. And the majority of them came back to Brian, right? So there was really nothing to go by, no real DNA evidence. So clearly they were either careful or something happened. But here's the other thing I didn't really tell you about Victor. Victor was never interviewed by investigators. And then he disappeared.
Well.
Isn't that a little shocker? Yeah. He was never interviewed by investigators. You would think that's the first person that they interviewed.
One of the people I would be, yep.
Especially when you hear about, so I don't know if this information came after, because clearly the girlfriend's going to be the first one that gets interviewed. She found the body. She's the one that gave the story that he hadn't been, that she wasn't able to get a hold of him for days and blah, blah, blah. So clearly you're always looking at the girlfriend or spouse as the primary suspect. Always. You have to make sure that you clear them first because you want to get them out of the way. Right. So that's the first person that you're gonna interview. But in that process, you would think like, wait a minute, all three of you, we're going in, right?
Yeah.
All four of you.
See, 2001. How was she calling him? Like landline to landline, because that was the early days of, the average person having a cell phone. You were in.
I'm assuming
2000. You're in flip phones, basically.
So I'm assuming it would probably be, and he's a businessman, so I don't know if he had like the early stages of phones, but he's also a drug user. Was it most likely myself personally, probably a landline. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he wasn't answering, so she goes over. I would assume it's a landline because if he's not answering, she's driving over there. Why would you drive to the house if it's a mobile phone? He could be anywhere.
And why would she call these other guys to have them come over unless she was scared,
or was already with them,
or was already with them? Yeah, and said, "Hey, I'm going to go check on Brian. Oh yeah, let's go over there." Then again, that comes back to that whole thing. But
here's the thing,
innocent in that,
right? But here's the thing: if Victor had already threatened the WinStar owner, why are they all together? You know what I mean? Yeah. It just doesn't make sense to me. How did they all get there? Were they already there? And then she showed up because they were outside waiting. He couldn't get in because the door was locked.
And you would think the guys that were doing the stakeout would have seen that action and kind of paid a little bit of attention to it, because I'm sure you would see. I mean, I would notate, right? You got this van, even though you're like, okay, this van isn't having anything, but we're going to keep an eye on it because this is kind of suspicious activity. It going in and out, folks going in and out, and you would know who that person was,
right?
And have them kind of visually ID'd. Yeah, really, really weird.
Just a lot of
Victor
unanswered questions.
Victor took off and went to, what is it, up there to Young, and he's hanging out with the
God,
Fisher guy. they're they're on
they're
the
both
run,
gone. They're
man.
on the
Yeah,
run, bro. They're both out
they're
of
on the
here,
run.
man.
He's like, you
That
break down
is
the house, I'd pop this guy. We're out of here.
Victor's probably gone back to Mexico or wherever he's from. I say Mexico, but because he said Hispanic, but I'm being clearly probably wrong about that. But he went down. He probably came back, got a Visa card with his new administration, and is under a different name. But
Right.
the point is,
He's now Tom.
he's now Tom. But you would think again, and I don't know the circumstances because again, it's very vague. This investigation. I don't know the circumstances as to why Victor was not interviewed and how did they let him leave before
No.
being interviewed.
No, all those people, I would have been like, hey, listen, we just need to question you guys because especially when a crime is really fresh, you've got that first 48 hours, to really dig in and figure stuff out. Because as time goes on, they have time to get stories straight, things together. Because you can interview people, and two people, even though they kind of witness the same thing, will give you two different stories, right? Because they
Correct.
have their emotional side to things and their interpretations too. I mean, this as well as I do. You've been in law enforcement, and people will see the wrong color of a car. What color was the car? And they'll say, "Oh, it was a yellow car," and it was like a green car or something like that. And it's just they want to see something or have a memory in their mind that they just don't have, and our brain reprocesses and puts stuff in there that doesn't need to be there. So
correct. And as time passes, like you say, things become more obscure.
Right.
You lose memory, or you're on drugs then, and there's just so many other factors. What was white might be ivory now, and they're just, you don't know, and you start giving just bad information, and that's what they go by, and you have to be careful with old news like that, or old information, you have to take it for what it's worth from where it's coming from.
Yeah.
A bunch of these guys that are, either have been in trouble with the law or don't want to deal with the law enforcement. So they're going to be kind of like very minimal in the information they provide, if at any or at all, right? They're not going to give a lot of information because they don't want to be involved. That's the last thing they want to do. They want to be like, I'm out of here. I'm hightailing it, just like Victor did. He was out. Hey, you're not going to question me? I'm out. I'm out of here.
Right.
And for them to keep the girlfriend still as a suspect, they're not completely writing her off as being cleared, but I feel like there's more to it, and I just feel there's a lot of unanswered questions. But because Victor's gone now, they can't really just blame it on her. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. It's just very suspicious to me. Just the whole thing is. So
yeah.
I don't know. What
I man, it's hard to say because you're talking about people that this happened in their early 40s, right?
Yeah.
Roughly, if everybody's kind of in the same age bracket.
Yeah.
Brian would have been roughly 42, 43 years old when all of this stuff was transpiring. So assuming people were in their late 30s, early 40s, I doubt it was, that far apart as far as age gaps. Everybody's in their early to mid 60s, edging towards late 60s now. So, that's man, there's a
unreliable now. It's very unreliable
it's really,
information.
Yeah, the information's probably, super, super cold file at this point. I don't know how they'll, if ever, not to say that they can't, something turns back up and this guy, again, maybe this guy Victor was a little bit older than them, and maybe he's getting a little up there and he's, a little senile or whatever, and maybe he starts talking too much to somebody and lets something slip that happened, and somebody.
Yeah, but if he's not in the country, what
that's
does
the
it
other
matter?
thing too. And
again, there was no information like what if there was anything missing from Brian's house, if there was money that wasn't accounted for. But again, who knows, right? For all we know, the girlfriend could have just said he didn't have money, he was broke, or whatever the case is. All I know is that he left a huge impact on Brett, his younger brother.
His younger brother,
he Brett actually said that he had a beautiful heart because he always put other people first. And it seems that until up to his end of his life, he still was putting people first. He was there trying to help other people or be the middleman or
Yeah.
but you have to consider the fact that, when you surround yourself with people like in this type of environment, nothing good could come of it. And now Brett is left with no answers to the death of his
Yeah.
brother. And I think that's the hardest as me as a person who has been through some kind of a homicide like that. It's hard to let go of something when you don't know what happened. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's
Right.
like
When the answers aren't there.
the
Like
answers
it's
aren't
not like
there.
it's easier, but there's a kind of a relief to it, if that makes sense.
Correct.
Where
Yeah. Yeah. At least you know what happened. You
right.
know the reasons or what was behind it. Whether it was because of a robbery, it was because of a bad deal, it was because of narcotics. I mean, clearly Brett knew that his brother would not end up in a good place if he continued in this path.
Right.
He was already prepared for it, but to have zero clue as to why, that's hard. That's hard
Yeah,
to deal with as a sibling, and not
it
know
is.
what happened to my brother, especially someone that even in his darkest moments, even in Brian's darkest moments, he still had enough love for people, the homeless community, to go out there and help them.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah,
and
and
that
somebody that's heartless would not be doing that, man.
absolutely. And so
They wouldn't
clearly
care.
he left an impact even on his own brother, knowing that he was in this
Yeah.
dark place and he was dealing with these very dubious people, but he still had a good heart to go
Yeah.
out there and help the community. And he would spend time with them. He'd be out there with the homeless folks and they knew him, and he was interacting with them. He was, clearly he did whatever he did behind closed doors, but when he was
Yeah.
out there, he was helping the community. And that speaks volumes for someone like Brian, and it's unfortunate that Brett has to now live with the fact that he does not know
What
why or
happened?
who took
Yeah.
his brother's life. And that's sad. That's sad. And anyway you flip it, that's just a sad story.
Yeah, it is. It sounds to me, I mean, after kind of putting things together, that it was some kind of bad deal just gone wrong, and
Yeah.
Brian was
No.
caught in the middle of it, and it sounds like the whole van thing, that they were kind of exchanging money, that they were kind of filling him out for a middleman of payment because he's trustworthy, right? He's got his own business. He doesn't want to lose his business, kind of thing. He's
And he's lived
in
there in his
he
house for years, so they knew
right,
he's not going anywhere.
right. And the thing is, he's doing so when you're in that world of drugs and you're trying to sell or buy or whatever, and somebody says, "Hey, I'll help you guys out. I'm a Walter White. I don't do any of this stuff," but they're not going to trust you,
Yeah.
right? Because you're not in that circle.
Right.
So if you're doing that stuff but you're on the up and up, you're that kind of guy that they're like, "Hey, this guy could be a good mediator for us," and all
Correct.
that. And
Yeah.
there's a good possibility that between the thing with the van and then the whole illegal gun trading and stuff, somewhere in that went south, and he was unfortunate and got caught in
Yeah.
in the crossfire, and Victor probably knew something,
In the
and
wind.
he just wanted to get out of Dodge before they started questioning him too much, because he probably had some information, even if he wasn't fully involved and truly wasn't there, and came in afterwards with his girl, with Brian's girlfriend. There's probably a good possibility that guy knew something. He seems like he was, out of that whole party, the most shady of
Oh yeah.
everybody, right? Because all those
And why
people
would you
are
disappear? Why would you just disappear? You
right,
know what I mean?
right, yeah, yeah. Because again, just like the our last Dark Crimes episode with the Fishers, same thing. If you're innocent, you're not going to leave, and especially it's your family. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you did it.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. So, and that's kind of the whole thing there. Well, if we get any updates on this, down the road, which I doubt we will, but if we do get any updates, we'll be sure to come back here and give them to you guys. But yeah,
Or if you hear anything or you know anything about this, call Phoenix PD or 480 witness for a silent witness.
yep. And this goes for any other kind of crimes that are out there. We're doing this series because it's something that like, researching some stuff and getting information, but they are really interesting, and it's the curiosity of our, everybody's mind to think about what could possibly have happened when these situations are really, really obscure and odd how everything happens. But yeah, we appreciate you guys for stopping by. Thanks for checking out the second episode. If you haven't seen our first episode, it was a two-parter for the Fishers. That was a really great one, and it took two episodes, or a part one and a part two of the first episode, because there was a lot to unpack on that one.
There really was.
Joe did a ton of work on that one, figuring everything out. So, but yeah, we appreciate you guys stopping by. Again, every Tuesday we've got something coming out, whether it's our Dark Crimes episode or our regularly scheduled program of Joe and Jay Outspoken. And like I say, every Tuesday, and then every couple months we have our men's edition mid-month Wednesdays. So make sure you check that out. All of our media channels are at Linktree/Joe and Jay Outspoken. So you guys make sure you take care of yourself out there, because it's a crazy world, and we don't want to be talking about your case on here. So
yeah, please. We definitely don't want to talk about it. So look after your loved ones.
Yep, definitely. All right. You guys have a blessed week.
You guys take care. We'll see you next week.
See ya.